And now, Deborah Cobalt Live.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today for Deborah Cobalt Live. Very special guest joining us to talk about a very, very important topic. Gloria Allred, the founding partner of Allred, Marocco, and Goldberg, which is the leading women's and minority rights law firm now for 44 years in the country. Gloria, it's an honor to have you on our program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Deborah.
I really, really appreciate it. Gloria, there's a lot to talk about. I know that you knew Ruth Bader Ginsburg well. We have some photos of you with her, and I know her passing hit you hard, like it hit all of us. But I guess the question is, gosh, Gloria, where do we go from here? We all know how critical this is. I'm going to let you take that away.
Yes, and it's just an honor to be with you on this really historic day. Where she is lying in state at the U.S. Supreme Court. We saw her taken in there this morning by an honor guard of more than 100 of her law clerks from more than 27 years that she was a United States Supreme Court justice, and some from her work on the federal court before that. Having said that, she really was and will continue to be an icon, a legal giant, a trailblazer, a pioneer for women's rights and minority rights. She is irreplaceable. She was unique. There is no one like her in terms of her place in the legal history of this country, because early on, in the 70s, and that's when I began to practice law, she was advocating as a lawyer before the United States Supreme Court, where she won, I think, 5 out of the 6 cases that she argued.
Yes, she did.
Which really expanded the women's rights and opened up doors of opportunity for women, for example, in the famous case involving the Virginia Military Institute, where women were excluded from that state-sponsored school solely on account of their gender. And she was able to open up those doors of educational opportunity for women and create that precedent that no state-sponsored school may exclude women solely on account of their gender, and so much more. And I mean, I loved her quote, by the way, at another point when someone said, well, when do you think there'll be enough women on the US Supreme Court? And she said, when there are 9.
I know, she's had some great ones, but that's one of my favorites.
Supreme Court, she said, no one was shocked when there were 9 men on the Supreme Court. But people say, oh, when you say that it will be fair when there are 9 women justices. So that was quintessential Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She believed it. She didn't just argue before the Supreme Court. She didn't just sit as a justice of the Supreme Court. It's not just what she did. It's who she was, Deborah.
Right. It was her measured way of getting to the details of the case. And because of the way she handled herself, I think people listened. It almost had something to do a little with that, she once was quoted as saying as well. Right. So tell me a little more about that, Gloria. You said people listened.
And she was very, very persuasive. She was very careful in her legal language and also in her language when she was speaking publicly outside of the courtroom. In terms of really understanding the power of words and the impact that her words would have, could have, and should have as she spoke them. But she was really a fearless warrior for justice, Deborah, and she spoke her mind. And I can assure you, when I
as you do,
of meeting her at the Supreme Court, there's the photo of the two of us in the Supreme Court courtroom. I was just seated there waiting for a ceremony to begin to honor a federal judge, and she came in with the other justices and all of a sudden walked over to me to speak.
Of course.
And I immediately jumped up, of course, out of respect to speak with her. I didn't know that photo was being taken at the time, but it was. And
Gloria, two legendary women together, and she knew who you were as you knew who she was. That was a really pivotal moment for you. It must have been, right?
it was. And I just was so honored to have a conversation with her there. And then later I was seated next to her as her dinner partner at dinner. So two wonderful conversations. And I can assure you that privately, she was the same person that you see in her opinions and in her speeches. She passionately committed to women's rights, very aware of the impact of cases and what they could mean to the rights and the responsibilities of women. Very, very committed to choice, that a woman should have a legal right to safe and legal, affordable, available abortions, to minority rights, and so much more.
Healthcare, environment, there's so much more, Gloria.
The environment, equal rights for persons who are gay and lesbian, and, you know, healthcare for all Americans. This is a woman who just cared deeply about others. They didn't have to be lawyers. They didn't have to be judges. She cared about the women who were factory workers and bookkeepers and in the military, homemakers, and elsewhere. I mean, this was the most important voice for women we ever have had on the Supreme Court, and I think we ever will have on the Supreme Court.
And let's talk about her relationship with Justice Scalia. That was so interesting, right? The two of them adored opera, and they shared such a friendship together. I believe that I read that she would go to his house almost every Christmas with the family, which I thought was very touching, because it also showed how you can differ the way you interpret the law, but you can still come together. And I thought that was I think she knew how important it was to display that. I mean, there was at least a sense of decorum at the time when they were doing that. I'm not sure what's going on now, right? That was really.
I think it's an excellent point that you can disagree without being disagreeable. And that is so important, because it was really important for her to have relationships. And of course, we know that Justice Anton Scalia was her polar opposite in terms of what he believed, in terms of how he believed that the United States Constitution should be interpreted very, very narrowly, as he thought the founders had written it, whereas she had a more expansive view of it, that it was the spirit of the Constitution that should be interpreted, not just literally the words. But that was the odd couple friendship that they had. And she always knew that even if she was in the dissenting, as a dissenting vote, and the dissent of the minority of the justices on any case, that her words could be very persuasive to future courts and future decisions that the United States Supreme Court might make at a later point. And so she was known as the great dissenter. And I know that I have had private conversations with other justices on the US Supreme Court. And some of them have pointed out to me how very kind she was to them and thoughtful to them, even though they had very different views and often voted differently than she did. Always very helpful, always very thoughtful to them. And, you know, that was so remarkable to them that they wanted me to know about that.
Yeah.
And I just love that part of her as well. I mean, I have a different role, Deborah. You know, I'm a warrior of a different kind, but I have to be a strong warrior for my clients and for justice. And, you know, I have to do what a lot of journalists do, and people like you do, Deborah, which is, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, which is what I do, because I need to make change in that way. Need to be a street fighter as a legal warrior. But her role as a justice was very different. Both roles are extremely important. I know she respected both roles. So she had to be gentler and yet very strong. And, you know, and as Justice Roberts said this morning, very precise in her language about what needed to be. And so anyway, I have such admiration for her and for all that she's done. And we will continue to fight on in her name.
Let's talk about that, okay? Because we know that President Trump is very quick to announce a decision or announce who he would like to see on the Supreme Court. As early as Saturday, he's saying. And there are conflicting reports when, in fact, you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg will be buried. Having said that, he's very quick to want to get this behind everyone before the election, and it looks like he's going to have the support to do that. It doesn't really matter what happened 4 years ago that they said, oh, we should wait for the new president. It's not going to happen. So, you know, now what? Now what do we do? What are some of the people that he's looking at very closely? How could that really change the fabric of so many rights that she fought for, that you're fighting for, moving forward, for women, for minorities,
Yes.
for gays and lesbians and LGBTQ, all of it? How can that change things?
Well, Deborah, let me just say that I think it was obscene that Senator Mitch McConnell, on the day of her death, announced that he was going to move forward with a replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She hadn't even been buried yet. She has not yet been buried now, today. And yet he had to rush to it. And then a lot of Republicans this week said, oh, yes, they're going to vote on it and they're going to support the president on it, on his nominee, not even knowing who that would be. And not honoring her last wish, as stated by her granddaughter, and her dying wish, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was that she not be replaced until a new president is installed. That dying wish by a woman who is so respected and loved around the world, by the way, notorious RBG.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Is that the little bobblehead?
Yeah, somebody gave me this as a gift. That death wish, it is not only not respected, but in addition, the idea that Trump would suggest that maybe she never said that,
Oh,
her granddaughter, that it's a hoax or it's a fake, that is so outrageous. I can tell you from my conversation with her, and I'm usually rather conservative in what I say in terms of how I might phrase what a justice would say. And I'm not going to give a quote here, but I will say 1,000%. That is so Ruth Bader Ginsburg that she would not want to be replaced until a new president is installed. To 100% certainty, I have no doubt that she said that to her granddaughter, because that would have been what her wish was. So anyway, where do we go from here is what you asked. And
because clearly that's not going to change. That didn't surprise me at all. Did it surprise you, Gloria? I mean, of course not. That the president said what he said, and that Mitch
and that
McConnell
he would be
said
so disrespectful of a person who has died. I mean, he was disrespectful of John McCain. You know, and his, you know, and the fact that he was a POW for 5 years, and said something about he likes the living, not, you know, not those who are not captured as POWs. It's so disrespectful. I mean, there's just no words for that. But where do we go for this?
Yeah, now what do we do? Because clearly they're moving ahead with this, and there's a few names that are out there, and I've looked them up, and I'm sure you have as well. And they're conservative. They're very, very conservative in their approach and the way that they read the law. And I know that they've been asked, how would you vote on this? You know, one of them is a Catholic, 7 children. Good for her, by the way. But can you, in fact, put aside your own personal beliefs? Of course, they will say yes. But that is a concern for so many people who align themselves more with Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the way that very often the laws are interpreted, right?
Well, 100%. And the idea is, you know, as we say, elections have consequences. And one of the consequences of who we vote for the Supreme Court is that person has the opportunity to nominate to any vacancy on the Supreme Court a justice or justices who will then serve for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
And so what we see is Trump choosing from the Federalist Society list of, you'll call them conservatives, I will call them, in some cases, extreme right wingers, some of whom, by the way, when I'm not saying these two on the list, but some of them who have been nominated for positions on the federal district court, the trial court level, have been rated unqualified by the American Bar Association. Takes a lot to be rated unqualified. And that used to be something that would be listened to and valued in any decision by the president to nominate someone for the Supreme Court, but totally, or any court, totally disregarded.
Come on, Gloria, all bets are off now. You know that with him. So of course it's disregarded with him. Does that surprise you? I'm trying not to let my bias out there, but and now here's what we're left with. And you're right about the voting and how it matters. But so now if they get in, and let's face it, the cards are stacked in their favor, then what?
What we can do is we always must have our voice. We have to speak up. We have to speak out. We need to get people to call the senators in the states where there are Republican senators.
Okay, wait, does that even work? Who picks up the phone anymore? I mean, honest to God, there's got to be like a better, it's almost like, do they even bother? We've tried to
call or email or
something.
Snail mail or direct message or whatever you're going to do. Let them know what your feelings are. But especially those, if you know or have relatives in states with Republican senators, I think that is extremely important. Because after all, what's at stake here? The first thing that's at stake is the Affordable Care Act. Mm-hmm. The Affordable Care Act, which is going to be a case, is going to be argued before the Supreme Court less than a week after the election this year.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very important.
President Trump and his administration have sought to strike down the Affordable Care Act, which allows for coverage for pre-existing conditions. Now, the Supreme Court can decide to do away with it. Congress didn't have the votes to do away with it, even though the Republicans wanted to do away with it and tried to do away with it. So, and even though the president says, I'm in favor of pre-existing conditions, the truth is his administration brought the case to strike it down, and it will be decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. And that is why he wants to it's one of the reasons why he wants to get his the vacancy filled as soon as possible, hoping that there will be enough then votes with the addition of Amy Coney Barrett or any other nominee to strike down the Affordable Care Act in the middle of a pandemic. So this is just one item that's at stake. Of course, Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision in 1973, in which women were afforded the right to choose legal, safe, affordable, available abortions, is hanging by a slim thread at the U.S. Supreme Court. And since 73, those who are anti-choice, anti a woman's right to have an abortion, those who are in favor of compulsory motherhood, I call it mandatory motherhood, they want to have the vote to strike that down. And so he has said he wants it stricken down and that he will appoint justices who will do that. So it's not an accident that he's choosing someone from the Federalist Society. And I can assure you, they will be people who would like to strike down Roe v. Wade.
Well, of course, there always have been. It's a very tough, that's one of the toughest fights ever out there is Roe v. Wade. What about minority rights, LGBTQ rights, and the environment? There's so much else that's at stake. It's mind-boggling to me. You know what?
Workers, collective bargaining rights, the rights of individuals who are gay, lesbian, transgender, so many more issues to be, decided by the Supreme Court on their rights. And of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a strong supporter of their rights, and so much more is at stake. So it's not just about the memory of RBG; it's about where we are going in the future. Because the decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court, whether we know it or not, and I didn't know it before I became a lawyer, affect us every day in every way in our lives. Climate change, climate crisis, so many issues. The power of government, the power of Congress, the power of the presidency, the power of the courts, and who can decide and what the decisions will be. So I'll tell you, as I watched the procession taking the funeral casket of Justice Ginsburg into the Supreme Court this morning, and hearing the words of Justice Roberts, I couldn't help but cry. Just sit there alone and watch him cry.
Well, Gloria, let's talk a little bit about you, because you spent your entire... I just
want to say that I always say, first we cry, then we fight, and that's what I intend to do.
Well, that's all right. Let's talk a little bit about you. You spent your entire life and career from the girl from Philadelphia, right? Because I know your background, fighting for all the same rights. Exactly. And you're the it person, Gloria. You're the person that we all go to for guidance. And it concerns me so deeply about how this will affect decades in our country. Just one pivotal decision can affect decades of where we're going. What's really a shame a little bit was, I know that they were, under the Obama administration, they were talking to Ruth Bader Ginsburg about possibly stepping down so that they could, assign a justice then. And sometimes you look back and you think, gosh, should we have done that? Should they have done that? What do you think about that? Because then they would have been assured to get the type of Chief Justice that they thought would move the country forward.
Look, even if he had appointed another justice instead of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, younger, for example, there's no guarantee that that person would still be alive today either.
This is true. What a great answer. That's very true. How do we know? That's a great answer.
I thought of it, but it's very true. I mean, given the pandemic, we've got young people dying of COVID-19 as well. And she said, Justice Ginsburg said, she will do the job for as long as she can do it, and then she will do it no more. And that's what she did.
That's what she did.
And I saw her in February, by the way, also at another event in Washington, D.C. I was on a committee to choose the first Ruth Bader Ginsburg Woman of Leadership Award recipient. And so anyway, so I was brought up on the stage behind her. There's a photo somewhere of that as well. And I thanked her for her commitment, her lifelong commitment to passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, because that day, February 14th, 2020 in DC, before I went up on the stage, I heard her once again speak about how important it is that we pass the Equal Rights Amendment. And we rarely hear that anymore.
We don't. So many people think it's been passed. That's another thing. I know,
but she was there, and I thanked her for that. And it's heartbreaking.
What are the issues that you've been working on currently? You're everywhere. You're marching, you're speaking, you're talking. I once said to someone, I think the other day, I said, I walked side by side with you over at one of the TV stations here in town in LA at Channel 11, right? And your gait is faster than mine. You've got some, and I'm a marathoner, okay? So you've got somewhere to go all the time. You've got a sign in your hand. You've got someone you're representing. Always. I don't even know when you sleep, if you do. Maybe you don't. You might have more hours in your day than most of us.
Well, I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning today doing some work. And then yesterday I got up early too, because I had a mediation on a case on the East Coast, and we did it by Zoom, but it started very early. So I had to get up very early, East Coast time, but it resulted in a fabulous multi-million-dollar settlement for my clients. So I'm very happy about that. It was worth getting up earlier for.
Worth the lack of sleep. But what is it that you're going to be working on moving forward to make sure that these rights are heard and don't go away? That's
Well,
what's
I
concerning.
will just say,
Yeah.
and I can't tell you what it is, but tomorrow, I most likely will be doing a press conference on yet another injustice against women that many women will be able to identify with, and that is really, outrageous. And you'll hear more about that. But it's not really about me as far as I'm concerned. I'm there to support my client, the victims. Takes so much courage for them to speak out. But it's important in the court of public opinion, because we have to change public opinion to be supportive of women's rights and to end the injustices against them. And that is part of it. We have to fight. I fight in the courts. I fight in the court of public opinion. I fight in the legislature where I've testified. I'll go to the streets and lobby. I will do whatever is legal. And I used to say legal and peaceful, but I think I won't even say peaceful anymore. That which is legal, to support my clients so they have a voice for justice, because we want rights for women. We want rights and we want responsibilities. And we're tired of waiting. And unless we speak up and speak out and help women to become empowered and drop the fear that they feel about speaking out,
That's so important.
Have changed. But so women who are empowered have been able to overcome that fear. There are real risks in speaking out. I'm not going to kid you. This is not just in their heads, but they take a risk, and it shouldn't be done in every case, but in some appropriate cases, it can be done with support. So when they become empowered, they will never go back again, because empowerment is physically good for the person and let me just good for the person, and often will result in justice.
And please remember, other women need to support other women. Very often they talk about that and say, yeah, we got to support each other. And sometimes when push comes to shove, and you're really just down to the wire, a lot of women will, in fact, turn their backs. Stop with that.
That's very important. But I also
we need to support one another. Okay, go ahead.
I also want to say that just because a person is a woman doesn't mean I will support her for the United States Supreme Court, because it has to be a woman who is going to stand for women's rights. It has to be a pro-choice woman. It has to be a woman who cares about equal pay and equal justice for women and equal opportunity for women in education, in the business world, in the sports world, in the entertainment world, in the legal world, the political world, everywhere. So, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, women should have a place at every table where decisions are being made. That's the kind of woman that I want on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Thank you so much for joining us. I don't even know if we have time. I wanted to ask you, do you have one case in particular that you may be most proud of, that you feel like really brought on so much change? Do you have like 15 seconds or 30 seconds to answer that for me? You've done so much, Gloria.
I'll just say it's my last case, my present case, and my next case. All of my cases I'm proud of. And most of all, I'm proud of the courage of my clients, the victims, in bringing those cases and seeking justice, which often results not only in justice for them, but for many others as well.
Gloria, how can people get in touch with you? Because I know that your entire team they're very agreeable to call anyone back. Someone has an issue and they need to talk to you, they need representation. They're always there. So how can they find you?
They can go to my webpage, gloriaallred.com, and they'll find ways to contact me through my webpage. In addition, they can call my office at 323-653-6530. That's my Los Angeles office. And I also have an office in New York City. And I'm also licensed in Washington, D.C. But we do cases all over the country, where I'm also often admitted in other cases. For example, I just got a notice from a reporter that we won an important decision in Georgia today in a civil rights discrimination case that we have there. And so, yes, we try to bring access to justice for as many people as possible. And if we can't help them, we will try to refer them. But reaching out is always a good thing to learn rights and know what the benefits and risks are of exercising your rights.
Thank you so much. Any final words about Ruth Bader Ginsburg that you'd like to say to our audience?
Fight on. We love Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and we will always be indebted to her. And we will fight on in her name for justice for women.
Thanks, Gloria Allred. And thanks all of you for tuning in today to our show on Deborah Cobalt Live. You'll find us everywhere. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're Instagram. And then, of course, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on the iHeartRadio app. We're just about anywhere that you find your audio and visual podcasts, you will find us. And please tell your friends about the show. It's really important. It's important to support the work of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her life, and also look up Gloria Allred and all the work that she's done to help women and so many other people. So thank you both. Thank you very much for joining us. And thanks to our audience. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.